We shall start with our first speaker, Dr. Love Kochave, who's the Executive Director and the Senior Consultant of the BBI Foundation, who's going to tell us how pediatric cataracts are different. On to you, Doctor. Could you share your screen?
Thank you, ma'am. So I'll... Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yeah.
So first of all, I would like to thank the ARC for giving me this opportunity. And this is one video I always share when I'm making a presentation on pediatric cataract, because yes, all of us should operate, but we should know that it is not a miniatured adult eye. And this is what happens when you don't have a proper training and when we attempt to do a pediatric cataract surgery. This was a very badly done surgery that came to us, and it was a single piece lens which was implanted in the sulcus. The inferior iris was missing, and half of the cornea is almost decompensated. So what we decided to do was first to remove the IOL which was touching the endothelium, and leave the child aphakic, so that we see the status of the cornea later on, and then decide what has to be done. So just a brief, this was just to show that why a proper training is important. And definitely, again, when we come to the IOL power calculation, it is not a miniature adult eye. The pediatric eyes are shorter axial length, steeper cornea, and a smaller AC depth. So error is more compared to the adult eye, and it increases by almost 3.75 diopters per millimeter in children as compared to adults. So in a scan, reading with maximum anterior chamber depth is taken so that errors are minimized. And just to give a representation as how we do it in children, these are the prerequisites for pediatric biometry. And many times when they are not cooperating in the OPD, we may have to do it in the OT itself. And this is a representation of that. Important precautions while doing biometry after general anesthesia is that better to avoid speculum, and ideally we should do immersion, but here you see that we are doing a contact biometry. Cornea has to be hydrated properly, and it's always better to keep a full range of IOL power with us, so that once we have the IOL power, and if we are operating in the same sitting, then we have the lens with us. Again, target refraction is different from what we do in adults. In adults, for us to we boast most when we give the patient a emmetropic refractive error. But in children, we don't aim for emmetropia. Mostly it is hyperopia, depending on the age and the status of the fellow eye. And decision regarding the amount of hyperopia, the compliance issues also come into play, because if we leave the child with a high hyperopia, then, and if they are not using spectacles after surgery, we may be actually inducing amblyopia. So a smaller hyperopia may sometimes be better. And again, it also depends on whether it is a unilateral cataract or a bilateral cataract. When it is a unilateral, the status of the fellow eye is also important. So that is one point. Second point that is important is that in unilateral cataracts, the myopic shift is much faster when compared to bilateral cataracts. So that factor also has to be put into consideration while deciding the IOL power. Again, timing of surgery, adults most till it becomes a mature, hypermature cataract, it is an elective surgery. But in children, it is a different. It is more or less an emergency. In bilateral cataracts, we can wait up to 8 weeks before operating, but it has to be faster in unilateral cataracts, and the second eye has to be operated within a week or two of the first eye, because again, that if we are delaying surgery of the second eye, then that may lead to a dense stimulus deprivation amblyopia. And if it is a visually non-significant opacity, then we can keep the child under close follow-up at regular intervals. Another important difference is whether we implant the IOL in children or not. So as you can see, many times in infants, we decide against IOL implantation, which is not the case in adult cataract surgery. And if we are doing a lensectomy, it can be either a limbal route or a pars plana route, and care has to be taken that we leave a small portion of anterior capsule rim for a future IOL implantation. And in unilateral cataracts, post-operatively, contact lens is advisable rather than aphakic lenses. Again, what IOL has to be implanted? Choice in adults is the full range of IOL, because all these IOLs are made for adult patients. But in children, we have to be much more selective. Hydrophilic is a big no, and mostly it has to be a hydrophobic lens. And sometimes if we are doing a SFIOL, or then a PMMA lens can be done. Between aspheric and blue blocker lenses, again, there is still, many of us are doing it, but still there is consensus is not there. Toric lenses in older children with a high cylindrical power, when the keratometry has become stable, we can go for toric lenses. Multifocal is still a controversial thing and generally is avoided in pediatric cataract surgery. Regarding single piece and three piece lens, I would say that it depends on the choice of the surgeon, whatever they are more comfortable with. And single piece are much more popular because of the ease of insertion. And as you can see in this video, is in a gross subluxation, a scleral fixated IOL is being done, in which is a PMMA lens. Another difference between adult and pediatric cataract is the capsulorhexis, and what you see in children is a highly elastic capsule. So many times the cystostome will not work. We have to do it either with a microrhexis forceps or a Utrata forceps. And vitrector is nowadays used a lot for posterior capsulorhexis, but some surgeons prefer it for anterior rhexis also. And anterior vitrectomy is must in all children. As you can see in the first video, surgery we were doing with microrhexis forceps, and again, it depends on the choice. It can be done with Utrata also. We had one presentation in one publication in which we compared a manual posterior capsulorhexis with vitrector rhexis. Main difference was reduced surgical time, and 100% IOL placement in the bag was one of the most important difference between both the mechanisms. Another important thing is the suturing. Adult cataract surgeons more or less have forgotten suturing, but in pediatric cataracts up to 7 years of age, we should suture the main port because of the low scleral rigidity, and beyond which we can decide on case to case depending on how tight the anterior chamber is. In infants, many times we need to suture the side port as well, because the eye may not become stable without suturing the side port. And the most important difference, I would say, is for an adult cataract surgery, a good surgery is the end of it. After a week or 10 days, we give a refraction and the patient is good, and frequent follow-up may not be that important. But for pediatric cataract surgery, it's the beginning. 5% of the job is a good surgery, and the 95% starts with after that, in which we have to follow the child very frequently. And maybe in the first year, every 3 months. After that, depending on whether amblyopia therapy is being done or not, we can delay the follow-ups. And every time what we assess is, the most importantly, the visual axis opacification, IOP monitoring, and whether the child is having a proper amblyopia therapy or not. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Love. Just ask this. I'll start off with a simple question. How would you prognosticate pediatric cataract in preverbal children?
Most important in Indian scenario is delay in the surgery, the timing of the surgery. Most of the time, the children don't present to us at proper age, and if they are presenting to us at a later stage, then the prognosis becomes worse. So timing of the surgery, I would say, is the most important. And then otherwise, whether any other anomaly is involved or not, the retina is fine or not. Those are the other factors.
Of course, nystagmus, poor fixation, and all
Yes.
of searching movements all add to it. You kept talking about the difference between a pediatric and an adult cataract. So how would you advise in the fellowship training of a pediatric fellow? How would you start off with? Just a brief, very, very brief.
The surgical training, you mean?
Yeah.
Most important is capsulorhexis. We have to train them in capsulorhexis, both anterior and posterior rhexis. If they have managed to, during the end of their fellowship, if they are able to do a good anterior rhexis with a forceps, then rest of it is more or less like a adult cataract surgery. So that is and what I see in our fellows is that is the most difficult. They end up extending both the anterior and posterior rhexis most of the times.
Dr. Murli, can you take on?
Yes, madam. Thank you. I would like to ask Dr. Love and the expert panel as well. Like which patients would you select for a systemic workup? I mean, Dr. Ahila Ayau, a pediatrician, is talking on systemic workup, but from our side, which are the patients that you would like to send for a systemic workup? What are the clues in diagnosis that our PGs and other pediatric ophthalmology trainees should look for, that this cataract should go for a systemic workup?
Bilateral cataract mostly, and in Indian scenario, if it is a total cataract, then torch screening, and otherwise also torch screening is generally must for all of them. And for other systemic disorders, in our setup, actually, practically speaking, we are not doing too much of systemic workup in pediatric cataracts. But torch screening, we are doing in all the children.
SG madam, SCR madam, or Dr. Ramesh, would you like to add on, or Dr. Jagadam sir, would you like to add on? I mean, how do you select these patients? Which patients should go for a systemic?
See, bilateral cataracts, as Dr. Love was mentioning, is definitely one of the criteria, provided if we take a family history, if parents, grandparents have got a cataract, we usually don't go for a workup. Again, bilateral cataracts with any systemic anomalies like cardiac diseases, like the hearing deficits, they also, actually all bilateral cataracts without a family history would ideally go in for a systemic workup. That should be the approach. And unilateral cataracts usually don't require a systemic workup, but need an ultrasound if posterior segment visualization is poor. So that I think should be the message which would go out for postgraduates.
I think this is very right. Beside bilateral cataract, when we examine these children and we find that at least I dilate each of the child pupil and see the type of cataract. And if I find that there is subluxation of the cataract, or there is a posterior lenticonus, or there is a coloboma, these are the children. If there is a persistent pupillary PHPV, or these are the patient where definitely we have to do a systemic examination of these patients beside bilateral cataract.
Dr. Ramesh, would you want to add anything before?
I think one of the simple thing when I look at a child and I tell our residents and fellows, if the face is looking something different, are they resembling the parents or not? That's number one. Number two is morphology. We have to look at, depending upon the morphology, I will classify them into other things. Third point, already Dr. Sujata has mentioned, any heart disease, anything, it will guide us where to go. And the fourth, already Dr. Sujata has mentioned it, whenever possible, examine the siblings, examine the parents. This will tell you that's one of the cheapest investigation, I would say, in terms of doing it in the clinic. It may not be possible all the time because parents sometimes don't accompany, even the siblings will not. During the follow-up, make sure that these three things are followed. Number one, any dysmorphism, morphology of the cataract, and systemic. These are the simplest way of working up the patient. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Can I add just one point? We're talking about unilateral cataract. I have seen very rarely there are congenital rubella syndrome which can present as a unilateral microphthalmus with cataract. So not that you have to take it as that all unilateral cataracts do not have to have a workup. Like Ramesh said, the morphology, the microcornea, that, then based on that, you need to take a decision. And then mostly all these kids are going to, go under general anesthesia. So preferably, it is always better to have a systemic evaluation, though you don't do all the torch titers, but it is always better. So just I wanted to add that.
Thank you, Dr. Kalpana. Thanks.